For this video, I'm going to show you how to do very simple statistics, how to look at your data very simply, and how to analyze a few numbers here in a very simple way. I'm going to use online tools and Excel, which I think is all of them are readily available for anyone to use. If you don't have Excel, you can use LibreOffice, which will have very similar functionality. So, I have a data set. Usually data sets come in the form of comma-separated values or some sort of text file with a delimiter that separates fields. Let me explain this. For example, here I have location, comma, diversity index, comma, Black or African American alone percent 2013, comma, American Indian and Alaskan Native alone percent 2013, comma, Asian alone percent 2013, comma, Native Hawaiian, and so on and so forth. These are all values, a text that is separated by commas. Then we have here, for example, we have Queens County, New York, Queens County, comma, New York, within quotes, comma, 0.742 something, comma, 20.9, comma, 1.3, comma. We have values again separated by comma. The only one that's tricky is this one. There's a comma in here, but because there are quotation marks around it, this means that the highlighted area is just one big value. This comma is not a separator. However, when there are no commas, then when there are no quotes, the comma is a separator. For example, here, this comma separates the previous field, diversity index, the previous value, diversity index, with this big value here, Black or African American alone, percent 2013. As you can see, there are commas here, right? But because they're within quotes, they're not taking us to separate values, but just, this is one big text value. So this is what's a comma-separated file. And actually, each line has the same, or should have the same number of values as the line before it, as the line following it. So for example, we'll see that here's one value, two values, three values, four values, 5, 6 values, 7, 8 values, 9 values. Let's pick any other line. We have 9 values. 1 value, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Every line has the same number of values. And here, if you count this big text here, you should have 9. So let's put this in Excel so we can start working. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy everything here. I downloaded this from the net. If you have this in your file system, you can just open Excel and from Excel directly open this file. But because I saw it on the internet, I'm going to just copy this and paste it in Excel. So in Excel here, I'm going to paste this. And it pastes all, as you can see, all in one cell. You see? All in cell A. Cell B, B1 has nothing in it. Just cell A. So I'm going to select this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the data menu, which you can't see here, but if I go to data, the data menu, and I'm going to go and I'm going to say text to columns. It might be that on your Excel or LibreOffice this is a different menu, but there's always a text to columns option. So I'm going to go text to columns, and then I get this little window, and it tells me, hey, is this text delimited? And I'll say, yes, it is delimited. Click next. The delimiter is the comma. Usually people have the tab selected, whatever, just select the comma here. And you can see how everything is now divided neatly into columns. I'm going to say next, and then finish. And now you can see that I have one row per field, one column per field, right? Now this is here, right? So I have one column per field. Now, sometimes you want to separate a few things. So for example, here, I have a county and a state. And this data, by the way, is the diversity index of all counties in the United States as of 2013. This is ethnic diversity. So sometimes I really want to like summarize by state, but the state is here, is in this field. However, what we can do is to do exactly the same thing that we just did. We're just going to separate this by comma and see what happens, right? So we're going to say, hey, again, this column has comma separated values. I know that in the file they were one big value, and that's how they translated here. But now that they're in Excel, I can tell Excel that these are two values. They're comprised of two values, a name and a state. This is going to break things up in two columns, but I don't have two columns to break it up. It's going to overwrite column B. For that reason, I'm going to insert another column here. I go to the Insert menu, then Columns. I have another column there. And now, what I'm going to do with this column A is I'm going to break it in the comma. So I'm going to say text to columns again. This is delimited by comma. See, the comma is there, and you can see that the location's here, and wherever there's a comma state is gonna show up next to it. I'm just gonna go finish, and now I have that, right? And I can name this state. State. Now I have the states. Okay. Now, it is often the case that I want to filter this. For example, I want to find what is the diversity index of Indiana, for example, the state of Indiana. So in order to filter that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first cell here, and I'm going to go either to this funnel symbol or data filter. If I say data filter, you'll notice that there's like a little arrow, little drop down on each of the fields. It assumes that the first row here, it has the titles, the headings of the columns. So I'm going to go into the state one. I'm going to not select all and just select Indiana, right? That's the one I want. So Indiana. There's Indiana. I close this here. Do not clear the filter. Just close this here. And these are all the counties in the state of Indiana with their diversity indices. So let's look at what we have here. We have diversity index, Black or African American, American Native, Asian alone, Native Hawaiian, 2 or more races, Hispanic, and white alone. So here's the state of Indiana. I can just copy all this data. You can just select, there are many ways to select it. I'm just going to select the old way, just going over all the cells. I'll copy, Control-C or Command-C. And what I'm going to do with Excel to work with statistics, I'm just going to create, with this plus sign down here, another sheet to paste stuff. So this is Indiana, and I'm just going to paste the values. What I can do with this is I can have, for example, the average. To do the average, I'm going to put an equal sign, average, and then select all of this again. Right? I can select all of this again. Let's see. I'm selecting all the counties in Indiana. Close parentheses, enter. And that gives me the average. The average diversity index is 0.15. Again, I selected the diversity index column. I could have selected anything. If I want to know what's the average percentage of Black or African American, I would have selected this column. So that's the average. Now, I can do other things like, for example, find the quartiles. So I'm going to just put the headings quartile 1, quartile 2, quartile 3, and quartile 4. And this basically, the quartile 2 is the median, by the way, right? And quartile 4, and quartile 4 is the maximum, right? I'm just going to put the 3 quartiles here. So quartile 1 will be equals quartile, open parentheses. Now, which data I want to get the quartiles from? Well, the whole state of Indiana. So I select everything again. I select everything again here. And then I do a comma. Look how quartile has the range here. And then comma, which quartile do I want? I want the first quartile. So I just put it there, the first quartile. I'm going to copy this and put it down here for the I'm going to copy and put it down here for the second quartile. I'll just put the number 2 here, and that's the median. And then I'm also going to copy it here, and this will be quartile 3. So these are my 3 quartiles, right? And I can put the maximum and the minimum right here. So for example, maximum would be equals max of, and then again, I select the whole thing. I select the whole thing, and then that's going to give me the maximum. And I get the maximum, right? So this is basically how you get these statistics. Now let's visualize the data. I'm going to select all of this, and I'm going to select it with Control-Shift and the down arrow. That selects this really quickly. If there's no spaces in between, then Control-C to copy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use tools on the internet to see what's going on. So first I'm going to go to a box plot. This URL here will take you to a box plot generator. It says enter comma separated data, but you can also just enter it, copy directly from Excel, one in each value. Okay? And then you just say submit data. Here I have the box plot. You can read about box plots and how to read them, but here's a box plot that I can then copy this image and paste it in a document, or save it as an image and use it in a document. But I also have very interesting stuff here. It tells me what the median is, what's the minimum, what's the maximum, and the first quartile and the third quartile. Remember, the second quartile is the median, so it's already here, right? It tells me also that there are outliers, so some points that don't fit neatly into groups. So this is how I would generate a box plot with this. Now, if I want to generate a histogram with this data, I'll go to this URL, and there's many generators for box plots and histograms. I just happen to think that these are easy to work with. And then the histogram maker, again, I will just paste the data, Control V, and generate the histogram. And I will see that here's the histogram for the diversity index in Indiana. As you can see, if we look at this, there's a lot of counties with very little diversity, and very few counties with, actually very few counties with much more, that are much more diverse. You can see here for each of these bars what's the average diversity index and how many counties are there. You can see a little bit more stuff here and change the histogram, but because this is not a class about histograms, I'm just going to leave it at this. Now, the last thing you might want to do is to compare data. So let's go back to our Excel spreadsheet, and let's compare Indiana to, say, for example, Florida. So instead of doing the diversity index for Indiana, I'm going to clear filter. That's one way to do it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for Florida. This is Florida. Close it. And now I'm going to select all of the counties in Florida. All of the counties in Florida. There are a lot of them. I'll select them, copy them, paste them in my sheet, and this is going to be Florida. Paste them in my sheet, and I can already see, for example, if I go and do the box plot or the histogram, if I do a histogram, right, what I will see is create new histogram. Remember this histogram. Now it says create new histogram. Let's go create new histograms. I paste my data, generate my histogram, and you will see the histogram is very different. In here we can see that most counties have like middle diversity indices, with few counties having a lot of diversity and another group of few counties having a lot less diversity. But overall, it's much more uniform. You see that. You can see this also in the box plot. So you can do reset, submit the data, and you can see the box plot is much more symmetric on both sides, right? Meaning that the data is more uniformly distributed, and you can see the different descriptive statistics. But the one statistic that we care about is the average here. Let's do the average for Florida. The average diversity for Florida, I'm just going to select this like that. The average diversity for Florida is 0.4, and here's 0.1. However, in statistics, we know better. We know that averages don't always tell the full story, and we need to compare this data and taking into account how uniformly distributed or not uniformly distributed this data is. So taking that into account, we want to see if these two means are really different. Are they really telling a story? For that, I'm going to use a t-test, which is a test to compare data, numerical data. Okay, compare averages of numerical data. And for that, I'm just going to do it here. I'm going to do t.test, equals t.test, open parentheses, and then the first set of data, which is going to be this one, I'm going to select with Control-Shift down arrow, comma, you see that it's writing the formula right here, comma, and then the second set of data, again with Shift Control down arrow, or in a Mac is Shift Command down arrow. Now, I'm going to put the numbers 2 and 3 at the end of this formula, 2 and 3. This means two tails, and this means unequal variances. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to get the safest possible t-test to compare. I'm going to hit enter, and I get a very, very small number. It's a 7.6 with 32 zeros ahead of it. Okay? If this value is less than 0.005, then we say that the means are effectively different. This result is a lot less than 0.0005, right? Because it's actually 7 with 32 zeros to the left of it. So this means, I can conclude that these means are indeed very different. There might be other states where this conclusion is not so clear-cut, okay? But this is how you get data from a CSV, a comma-separated values file, how you can visualize it, get descriptive statistics on the web with very simple tools, and how you can compare the averages with a t-test in Excel. Thank you.